What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. We have some fun stuff to get into today. The MPDs did officially get released. We have charts, some numbers, mostly placings though. And I think some of you guys are going to like it, especially if you're really into RPGs or maybe you're a little older and you remember kind of the type of games that Octopath was trying to represent. You're going to like, I think you're going to like the charts here. It's going to be pretty fun to go over. And then I'm also going to kind of talk a bit about the Battlefield 5 issues that are going on. You probably see a lot of talk pretty much around the internet. I'm going to give you a kind of a perspective on it and kind of explain to you what's happening exactly here and why people are kind of losing their mind over it. Also, before we start, we are coming up on the 140,000 subscriber giveaway for Monster Hunter on the Switch. That's coming out, of course, later on this month on the 28th. So if you're not already, consider subscribing. Check the link down below and get entered so you can win. We're giving away 2 copies, and I kind of wanted to get there so we give it away by release day or before September. So consider hitting that subscribe button down below so we can make it there. Let's start with some quick news, guys. We're going to start with Assassin's Creed. We know Assassin's Creed Odyssey is coming out in the next few months, and sure, it's looking good. Honestly, for an Assassin's Creed game, I think it's going to be fun. Origins wasn't bad. It got a little boring, a little old for me as I was playing through it. So it was kind of a struggle when you're working through it later on in the game. But it looks like if you're maybe a little confused about why Assassin's Creed is following up again this year, because usually we get like a Watch Dogs, it was bi-yearly at that point. Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs. It looks like Assassin's Creed won't be around next year, and this was actually talking to GameSpot from Is Guillermo saying that, yeah, we had 2 teams working on it, and we won't have Assassin's Creed for next year. So I guess if you were concerned about Assassin's Creed being a yearly thing, as it was getting kind of played out there for a little bit, I do know a lot of people are kind of getting maybe a little Assassin's Creed out there. We can look forward to next year with something different. I almost think Watch Dogs is the obvious choice, like a Watch Dogs 3, but that, of course, might be something they even push back a little further, and maybe we finally get that Splinter Cell. I keep saying it, but maybe we finally get that Splinter Cell. It's definitely not going to be Assassin's Creed next year, so it's their next, I guess their next holiday game would be something else. So, what could it be? Also, we found out Dark Souls Trilogy is coming out for Xbox One, PS4, and it's a very weird situation because they just released the remaster over the summer, sold that to people, and now they are throwing it in a pretty nice looking steelbook case and reselling it. And then the other 2 that are already on the systems, and it's $80. It's coming out the same day as the Switch version of Dark Souls Remastered, the 19th. And why they're doing this, I don't know, because they seem to be milking the Dark Souls franchise like crazy. I mean, this is the company, Bandai Namco, that released a broken version on the PC and then sold the patch essentially to PC gamers at a discounted rate. This is crazy, but they keep doing it, and I don't think, some people are a little concerned about this. Oh, this is exactly like the Mass Effect thing that happened with the Wii U and the other versions. Not really, no. This is a good bit more expensive. All of these games already exist on those systems, so I don't really know why people would rush out unless you're a massive fan of the series, or I guess maybe you've just never played them and you're like, oh, $80, I can get all of them. I don't know. And the other thing about this is the Wii U to the other versions of the games, when it was Mass Effect, really didn't provide any other benefit, whereas the Switch, of course, has portability, which is something the other systems just can't do. And I think there's people who are going to buy into Dark Souls on the Switch specifically because of the portability. So I don't think it's going to affect it. Well, the weird thing was they announced it during Gamescom. Not necessarily, I think, at Gamescom, but just during Gamescom. So it got kind of lumped in with all of the news. And it's not going to be available in Europe, which is just weird. In fact, they even put out a tweet that basically said, oh, don't worry, guys, in Europe, just buy it on the Switch. It says, well, that's not really the point. So I don't know why they did it that way, especially during Gamescom. They could have waited like to next week or something to announce it, but there you go. Then also we got some Sekiro Shadows Die Twice gameplay. The gameplay leaked out early, I think. It came out, it was from GameSpot that I saw it, and it seemed to get leaked out early, and then they released it later on in the day yesterday. But I was watching the gameplay of this, and it looks great. It reminds me of Tenchu. I remember playing Tenchu Z on the 360, and I liked it. I know that was a hit or miss game for a lot of people. This one looks more refined and more polished, and I got massive Tenchu vibes from this game. So I am ready for Sekiro. It's got to wait till next year to play it, but this is going to be a really cool game for people like me who really like the Tenchu series. And just in general, I think it might even get people introduced into that type of game that maybe haven't played Tenchu, and then maybe they go back and play Tenchu, and then we get that Tenchu revival. Hey, I mean, we've seen a lot of revivals, weird revivals at Gamescom, so Yeah, why not? Let's do Tenshu, I guess. Now with some of the quick news out of the way, guys, let's jump into some of the bigger stuff, starting with news for Linux users who play games. This isn't normal. You usually don't get a lot of Linux news for gamers, because Linux, while it's a good operating system for what it does, it's not really the gamer's choice. Usually they pick Windows and that's kind of it. It's been that way for a while now, but there are some hardcore Linux users who want to play games on it, and Steam even has their own OS running on Linux. So they've been kind of tinkering around and working with it, and the other day they kind of talked about it, and then yesterday they really announced it. They showed off Steam Play, and it's going to have a Linux compatibility layer that's going to use Wine that they have modified, calling it now Proton, and it's going to add an extra compatibility layer for a lot of games in Linux, specifically their Steam OS is what they're pushing, so that you can play multiple games that would only work in Windows at the time. And they're even using things like Vulkan integration, which is crazy, and this makes a lot of sense from Steam's perspective, as they use the Steam OS and they're trying to push it more and more, and it hasn't been going as well as they would have liked it to. We saw the Steam machines that came out and they kind of fell off. They even stopped selling them completely, and I think they wanted to get their Steam OS completely ready to go before they started selling hardware, because they were pretty much just selling hardware with Windows on it. So why? What's the point in that? You want to get your OS out there, and I think that's what they've been trying to refine, and this is really big for Linux. This is not something you usually see in the news, like I said, so to see actual Linux gaming news like this from Valve is big, and you can go download it. It's in beta and try it out and see what you think. People are kind of trying games that aren't completely compatible yet. They released a list of games, you can go check it out, but people have been trying to load up other things and they don't work yet. So it looks like it's something that people who are creating games can look at and say, yeah, I want it to be compatible, I'll make it compatible. And I'm sure Steam and Valve will continue to add more compatibility going forward. This is kind of the first step to making Steam OS like a gaming, like a serious gaming operating system. It's pretty cool to see. Next up, let's talk about some sales figures. Let's start with the MPDs. This is something we talked about last week, where we had like kind of the rumors that were out, the leaked numbers that were out. I kind of checked them out. I checked with some people and they were correct. And yes, they do look like they were right. Octopath Traveler was the #1 selling game without eShop sales. This is only physical sales that they could track. They can track digital sales from some storefronts, but they have not been able to track eShop sales. So this is all over the counter in retail store sales for Octopath Traveler, and it topped #1. The Switch was also the best selling piece of hardware, just overall, revenue dollars and units sold. So Octopath and the Switch pretty much own July completely. We're still going to look at the top 10 here, so let's get started. Obviously, Octopath Traveler, #1, that's without digital sales. Grand Theft Auto 5, which it just won't go away, at #2. Mario Kart 8, which is pretty impressive actually to see here at #3, again, without digital sales. Those are all physical, so yeah, that game keeps selling. Probably with every Switch that sells, I bet you people buy Mario Kart because it's like the de facto game on that system. Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy at #4. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. That's also very impressive right there at #5. So you have 3 Nintendo-only games in the top 5. That's pretty impressive actually in the MPDs, all without digital sales counted. Far Cry 5, there's Super Mario Odyssey, again, no digital sales, #7. The Crew 2 at #8. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege, and then Mario Tennis Aces had a bit of a drop-off because it took the MPDs in June as the best-selling game, and now it's down to #10. Again, though, no digital sales there. Overall, the games industry generated $749 million in revenue in July, and that's actually up 14% from $655 million from the same period last year. So in 2017 July, it's up pretty well. It seemed like a lot of that had to do with accessory sales. The Xbox One controller was the best-selling controller, which makes sense. They release a lot of controllers, and people probably buy extras then, and I think you have a lot of PlayStation users who don't really need PlayStation. They don't release a lot of PS4 controllers, whereas Xbox One controllers seem to get a new one like every month, I think. And of course, you can build your own Xbox One controller as well, so I think that makes a lot of sense for why Xbox seems to sell the most controllers most months, and it's just because that and headsets are what really drove profit in stores, so we would always put them at like the most opportune places where people would see them because they made us the most money. That controllers, headsets, those would be all over the place. They made us money. This is big though for RPGs in general. Octopath having this big of a push in the beginning. Square still has to take some blame here because they massively understocked this game. We're going to see that in the Media Create sales charts because Octopath didn't even place in the top 10 in Japan, which is sad because I think it has a lot to do with the stocking issues that Square has been going through with them just not being ready for it. But it is good to see it rolling along in the US. This, of course, is only for the United States, doesn't count any other part of North America. But to see a JRPG that resembles stuff from 1995 taking the #1 spot over some pretty big games, that is something special right there. Especially, like I said, if you're a bit of an older gamer and you remember the old JRPGs, this is a big deal. It's great to see. The Switch takes July, and then the PS4, then the Xbox One. I do believe though that the classic systems actually probably sold the best, as we heard about that somewhat. But I guess if you're going by like the big ticket consoles, right, that play multiple games that you buy, yeah, Switch, PS4, Xbox One. So it was good all the way around. The game industry seemed to go up in revenue from last year, which is always a positive, and the Switch and Octopath took #1. Next up, let's take a look at the Media Create sales charts. We're on the topic of sales numbers. These, of course, are the physical sales that take place in Japan every week. I like to go over them because it's generally interesting. We get to see actual numbers. Pay attention to the top 10 because you're going to notice a bit of a theme here. Let's get started with those now. Minecraft, I know, right? Minecraft was #1. That's how you know this was kind of a slow week for Japan when Minecraft jumps all the way from the 7th spot to the #1 spot. 25,948. Minecraft on the Switch has actually crossed 200,000 units then. That's pretty good. Splatoon 2, very close, by the way, to taking the #1 spot. How crazy would that be? Splatoon 2 trying to take #1. #2 at 24,188. The Taiko Drum and Fun at #3, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe #4, WarioWare Gold at #5, Mario Tennis Aces #6, Pro Baseball at #7, Captain Toad at #8, Legend of Zelda #9, Kirby Star Allies #10. I told you guys Octopath was not in the top 10. That's because it was at #12 with 8,000 units sold. It continues to drop, and a lot of that probably has to do with stock, as I have a feeling this game should be able to break 300,000 units in Japan, a minimum by the time it's done, maybe 400,000, and it still has not even crossed 200,000. It is very weird. And by the way, I told you to notice the theme here. Do you notice that the top 10 is all Nintendo products? The only one that I've seen that seems to break away from that, starting at #14, and that's Yakuza 3. It dropped 74% from last week when it topped, down to 6,753. After that, you have to drop all the way down to 19 and 20 with Powerful Pro Baseball and then Fire Pro Wrestling. Everything else was all Nintendo products. So a slow week, but a big week for Nintendo. And you're going to see that again in the hardware, which, yes, the Switch, despite a slow week, goes up to 54,647. That's up about 4,500 units from last week. And you're going to notice lifetime to date, the Switch is coming up on that 5 million mark. PlayStation 4 is actually up as well, 25,843. The 3DS, 11,896. The Vita, 3,000 units. And the Xbox One actually jumped and was very close to that triple-digit number at 96. Now, the Switch is closing in at 5 million, but the PlayStation 4 did cross 7 million units, which is pretty big, I think, for a home console nowadays in Japan, where they are very mobile focused. They like their handhelds, they like their portable systems. To see the PS4, a home console, cross 7 million, whereas its nearest competitor in terms of a power system, a home console, is the Xbox One at 98,000 units. Sure, the Switch, while it does have that portable nature, I'd be curious what the Switch sales would be if it was just a home console. That's at 5 million just about. It's going to get there in the next few weeks, and I do think it will be passing the PS4 probably by the end of the year or early January. So there you are, a slow week in Japan, but an interesting week to see the top 10 be all Nintendo red, and then of course see the Switch still climbing in sales despite it being a slow and kind of boring week in Japan. Interesting nonetheless, and I'll be curious to see how things change as we get into the holidays, and of course, I think we all want to see the Pokemon sales charts when it comes out, because that's going to be interesting. It's probably the most controversial Pokemon to come out in a long time, maybe ever. And we'll see what kind of sales the Switch can pull alongside Pokemon. It should be fun. And our last bit of news, let's talk about this Battlefield 5 news and issues that are going around. If you haven't seen it, it does appear that Battlefield 5 is currently tracking behind Call of Duty and Red Dead Redemption. Its closest competition, I assume, because they're both first-person military-style shooters, is Call of Duty Black Ops 4. I think we always pit Battlefield versus Call of Duty every time they release the same year because, of course, Battlefield doesn't release every single year like Call of Duty does. And after seeing Battlefield 1 go head-to-head and nearly winning against Infinite Warfare, it did not, by the way. One of the most hated Call of Duties is still the best-selling Call of Duty of the year when it comes out. That's just the power of Call of Duty. I knew Black Ops was going to be the best seller, and it will be. I think it'll even outsell Red Dead. I don't think Red Dead's even going to be able to take out Call of Duty. Black Ops is just too powerful of a brand name. But Battlefield 5 is tracking behind, according to Cohen, who's an analyst firm and everything, by 85%. This seemed to pop up on CNBC, and everyone's been looking at this, assuming any reason they can as to why Battlefield 5 is struggling. There is a massive controversy. Of course, we all know this. It's all over the place of the historical accuracy of Battlefield 5. But I don't think that's the biggest reason. I think there are a ton of small things holding Battlefield 5 down right now. So, of course, we had that trailer. People freaked out. There was that big backlash and everything about historical accuracy. But that was mostly the internet. And I don't think a lot of people who are out and about buying these games are pre-ordering, which there's a whole argument about pre-orders declining anyway right now, just in general, just across video games. I don't think you're going to see a lot of the people online complaining actually translate to the real world. I've seen it myself when working at game stores. It's just a lot of people who walk in and buy a game just they're just not really plugged in like that. I mean, there are people who are, don't get me wrong, but the vast majority just are not. Why do you think Madden sells as well as it does every year, despite everybody everywhere pointing out how much of a cash grab it is at this point? Same with FIFA, big cash grab, no one cares, they'll buy it, right? Battlefield's an interesting situation. I think it has a lot to do with when it's coming out. It's almost a Titanfall 2 situation, if you will, although it won't sell that bad. Like, I'm more interested in Battlefield than I am in Call of Duty. Maybe even more than Red Dead. I don't know. Red Dead looks pretty good, though. But I'm definitely more interested in terms of shooters in Battlefield 5 than I am in Call of Duty. But there's got to be reasons why it's tracking so far behind. And a lot of that has to do with everything around it. In October, people have to pick what they want. And how about I just tell you all the games that are coming out in October? Starting on the second Astrobot Rescue Mission, Forza Horizon 4, Fist of the North Star, Mega Man 11, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Super Mario Party, Disgaea 1 Complete, WWE 2K19, Black Ops 4, World Ends With You Final Remix, Lego DC Super Villain Starlink, Warriors Orochi 4, Siberia 3, Battlefield 5, Dark Souls Remastered, Soul Calibur 6, Crayola Scoot, I don't know what that is, Just Dance 2019, Disaster Report 4, My Heroes 1 Justice, Red Dead Redemption 2, and then Call of Cthulhu. So there is a lot of stuff coming out. The big hitters, Red Dead, which Red Dead is a very much of an outlier. It's not, you don't get Red Dead every year. I mean, we haven't had Red Dead forever. We haven't had a Grand Theft Auto release in a while. It's a weird thing to have Red Dead show up the same year as a Battlefield because it's just not normally a thing. So that's weird in the first place. Call of Duty having Black Ops next to its name, it doesn't matter. They're not going to have a single player campaign. It's still going to be the best selling game of the year. It doesn't matter. People are going to buy it. We'll see how this Blackout mode goes. But you have Battlefield massively crowded. That's not counting what's in September. And of course, we got November coming up with things like, I know Pokemon is in direct competition. People are still going to have to pick. Do I save for this? Do I get this? So it's already crowded for it. That's a big issue. And then you have EA being EA. They're a company a lot of us like to hate. It's the way it is. Wasn't always like that, by the way. If you're a little older, you might remember things like Medal of Honor Frontline. We used to love seeing EA games challenge everything pop up because we knew we were in for it for a great game. Then they discovered that you could sell DLC after the fact, that you could work in microtransactions. You could even sell a full season pass before we even get the game. And that's kind of where EA is now. So we already look for reasons to not like EA. And then when they say things like, if you don't like it, don't buy it. As soon as you tell your consumer base, don't buy it, that sticks in their head as much as they think. And it's kind of showing that now. And I really don't think it has as much to do, to be honest, with the controversies around the historical accuracy. I really don't think that has a lot to do with it because people who walk around in the stores and stuff, they don't really care that much. The average consumer doesn't. They're not plugged in like you and me, and it doesn't really cross their mind to look at the box and see possibly a female or a male on the front cover. It just doesn't bother them. But their biggest issue with the whole thing has to be that they did not do Bad Company 3. I think Bad Company 3 would have been a bigger sale, and I'm going to explain to you why. When Battlefield 1 was announced, it was a massive turn from what we were used to and what a lot of people wanted at the time. What they wanted was a boots on the ground, like just gritty, old school experience that Call of Duty was not giving them. They just weren't. And here comes Battlefield 1, people get really excited, and that's the closest they've ever been to outselling a Call of Duty. It was a great game when it came out, and it was a massive turn from Hardline. Hardline, Battlefield 4, because I know there's some people who stay with Battlefield 4, those were, well, they were games that people really looked into and liked, and then they got kind of tired of it. And oh, Battlefield 1 flips everything around. Let's check this game out. And now Battlefield 5 shows up. It looks very similar to Battlefield 1. So the excitement from just the shock of that change, it's not there like it was with Battlefield 1. So it feels very status quo. And when you get to that point, they start looking at other games to play because the excitement isn't there. I think if they went from Battlefield 1 and then just completely turn around and something like Bad Company 3 that also probably would have avoided any controversy, since Bad Company 3 is just not taken seriously anyway. It's Bad Company 2 was kind of a funny, fun game where you blow up buildings and roll through, and it was just a good time. I think Bad Company 3 would have been the better choice, but they stuck with kind of the old school World War setting and everything and did Battlefield 5. I think that is actually their biggest mistake overall, was sticking with kind of the World War setting when they could have jumped to Bad Company 3 and then jumped to Battlefield 5. That jump back and forth in time probably would have done them some good. Oh, and I guess the last big thing is these are just pre-orders. We don't even have sales charts. We don't know how they would affect at time of retail, if maybe something like a Battlefield 5 would sell better after it comes out for Christmas. Those are things we don't know yet. We're judging pre-orders, and to be honest with you, pre-orders are kind of on the way out anyway. I mean, why do you got to pre-order a digital game? Can someone explain that to me? I don't think you're running out of downloads, but hey, maybe someone could tell me. I don't know. It doesn't make sense really to pre-order games much anymore, unless it's a hard to get collector's edition, I guess. That's the only reason. Like, I had to pre-order my Octopath Traveler, right? You got to pre-order that. I had to. It's hard to get now. It is. So I don't really pre-order any of these bigger games that they're going to have, thousands in stock at something like a Walmart or a Best Buy. It just doesn't make any sense. And guys, that's where I'm going to leave Newswave today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It went a little longer than I thought, but hey, the topics were a bit longer today. Make sure you guys like the video if you liked it. Dislike it if not. Leave comments down below about everything. I'm curious your take on the Battlefield situation, why you think pre-orders are down, and if you think it'll continue or maybe it'll turn around at time of release and retail and everything. I'm very curious on your thoughts on that. And then also, of course, let me know about the NPD sales charts and what you think about that. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.